By now, basically everybody has heard how the US has sent warships and bombers to Iran. Not in the country, but in proximity to the country because of the recent actions that Iran took. Now, the question here is, what's actually going on in this situation? Now, as someone who watched the speech that the president of Iran gave when this began, I can certainly say I do know. The U.S. unilaterally pulled out of the JCPOA agreement, that'd be the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, also known as the Iran nuclear deal. Basically, if Iran didn't build nuclear weapons, it would get sanctions relief and some other benefits. Now, aside from the fact that essentially they didn't really get those benefits, somehow they just didn't find themselves materializing. The U.S. never actually really lived up to its agreement in full. Now, fast forward a couple years. U.S. President Donald Trump decided to pull out of the JCPOA on the pretext that Iran had violated the agreement. Now, all European signatories said, no, Iran is fully in compliance. The International Atomic Energy Agency, who monitors these things and 4 times a year comes into Iran and inspects, has certified that Iran has not violated the deal. Yet, this phony evidence was presented by Israel, most famously presented by Benjamin Netanyahu, where he showed a bunch of documents which not only the IAEA and the European signatories said were documents that they were already aware of and were years out of date. A lot of it was manufactured as well. However, this did not stop Trump from telling the U.S. public that Iran had violated it. And of course, being that you can basically tell the U.S. public anything, they believed it. Now, essentially, the U.S. withdrew from the deal without any real justification for it, without any real reason to. So Iran waited 1 year. Now, on the 1-year anniversary of the United States withdrawing from the deal, the Iranian president, Rouhani, gave a speech denouncing the U.S. actions and said that they were now going to take measures to deal with the actions of the U.S. It works like this. If the U.S. withdraws from the agreement or does not live up to its obligations, Articles 27 and 37 of the Iranian nuclear agreement are things that Iran can do if the U.S. does not live up to its word. So, Iran has announced, okay, we waited a year for you to come back and act properly, and the U.S. refused to do so. So what happened is Iran declared its intention to do so, to do those things which they are fully within the agreement allowed to do. Now, I went and did a spot on Press TV when this happened. I watched the speech, and then I went on there and gave my opinion, etc. That video is uploaded here. It should be the last Press TV video that I did before this video. And one of the things I said is Iran is going to take these perfectly legal actions and then be blamed for it. Is that not exactly what we have seen? The United States has essentially slandered Iran by saying that they're violating the agreement, doing things they're not supposed to be doing, when they are fully within the bounds of what the agreement says. The agreement says, if the U.S. does not live up to its end of the agreement, Iran can enact sections 27 and 37, and that's exactly what they've done. But now the U.S. is taking that and claiming that it's Iran violating it. But didn't they already claim that they violated it before? So that's twice now they've claimed that Iran has violated the agreement, and they haven't. But the lie that they have this time has been the justification for sending warships into the area and for sending bombers near the area. Okay, what's the point of this? Essentially, the sanctions that were placed on Iran, the part of the nuclear agreement was supposed to stop them from building nuclear weapons, as if the U.S. has any right to tell them not to. But Iran did agree to it. I disagree with that decision by Iran. They should have told the nuclear agreement to essentially go to hell and chart their own course, regardless of what the United States wants. But that's me. I'm not the politician in charge of things. So, they went along with it. They played fair. They played nice. They followed the agreement, and this is what they get. Essentially, the United States did not get what it wanted out of the agreement, and that was the destabilization and destruction of Iran. In fact, Iran had continued to grow during the period that the deal was in place. That's not what they wanted. Iran has continued to extend its influence in relationships with Iraq and, more importantly, Syria. So Iran has been spreading more of an anti-US influence inside the Middle East, and this is what the United States cannot stand. So, as a result, the US needs some kind of pretext to ramp up hostilities against the country. Enter the fake claims of violating the agreement. Now, previously the United States threatened that it would take all Iranian oil off the market. Now, aside from basically every expert in the oil industry saying that that's basically impossible, Iran said, if this happens, we will close the Strait of Hormuz to oil shipments. Now, 1/3 of all oil that is transported by sea passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, as this happens, it is necessary for oil tankers to pass within Iranian waters because the Strait of Hormuz is so small. So, it is legally, by international law, legal for Iran to do so. They can close off their international waters to whatever they want. It's full within their legal right to do so. And doing something like that would be extremely devastating for the price of oil. But Iran said, all you have to do is live up to your own agreement and essentially don't block us from selling our oil, which the U.S. doesn't have any right to do anyway, and everything will be fine. Now, because of that, the United States has sent warships into the area so that if the U.S. does push this too far and Iran says, that's it, we're closing the Strait of Hormuz, U.S. warships are going to attack and force other people being able to pass through Iranian territorial waters, which has never been an issue up until now. Iran's never blocked people from getting through. They have never done things that would antagonize within the realm of the Strait of Hormuz. They've always allowed people to pass through and conduct trade without interfering. But this may change. And all of this is being done with the consent of the American people who don't stick up. They don't say anything because it's just the evil Iran, that message that they are fed in the media every single day. So what have we learned from this? I said, essentially, in the Iran interview, if Iran even acts in retaliation within the limits of the agreement, they'll be demonized for it. And that's exactly what's happened. Even when you have an agreement with the U.S., that agreement means absolutely nothing because the U.S. will violate it as soon as it's convenient for them. And then when you take rightful actions to try to deal with it, the U.S. claims that you're the aggressor and starts threatening military action. And that's exactly what has happened in this situation. So now we could be very well looking at a standoff between Iranian warships and U.S. warships in the Strait of Hormuz inside of Iranian waters. Like that whole everybody's a threat to us, except that somehow the hostilities always take place in the other person's country. That fighting terrorism always seems to involve invading other people rather than, say, securing your own borders kind of thing. Interesting, isn't it? Why don't we just accept this for what it is? It's the U.S. trying to exert more pressure on Iran now that it has a pretext for doing so. The original claim didn't hold up because the European signatories told the U.S. that they were lying. The International Atomic Energy Agency said that they were lying. But now that the U.S. has this new lie, it's enough to justify it. And the American people will sit back and allow it to happen, because the vast majority of the U.S. public does not care who dies as a result of their system. And they'll lament poverty in their own country, but if that same system enforces that poverty in another country, they don't care. It doesn't mean anything to them. If 40,000 Venezuelans can die in a year, why would they care anything about Iranians? If 22,000 children can die every single day from capitalist-enforced poverty, and yes, the global economy is capitalist, and yes, those children are dying from poverty. It's poverty in that system. It is capitalism killing these children. If they can sleep at night with that, a system that's enforced by the barrel of a gun, and not just by the U.S., but many other countries as well, then why would they care anything about Iran? So, as the United States is essentially threatening possibly another world war, I doubt another world war would come out because of this, but theoretically it could. So there is the risk of this becoming a world war, even though I don't think that the odds are very good that it would happen. For what? I mean, I know it's a meme by now. X did nothing wrong. Well, Iran literally did not do anything wrong in this case. They played by the rules, and when the U.S. would not play by the rules, Iran went by that same agreement, continued to act within the agreement, and they're still getting screwed. I think it's pretty obvious by now that an agreement with the U.S. doesn't mean anything, and that people shouldn't sign agreements with the U.S. I mean, the long-standing trade agreements between China and the U.S. don't mean anything. Long-standing trade agreements between Mexico, Canada, and the United States don't mean anything. Between the U.S. and the EU, they don't mean anything. So what is Iran to do? What's the point of even dealing with the U.S. if they're just going to do this? What do you do when the threat against you is wholly irrational, or is at least acting wholly irrational? If there is no appealing to someone, if there is no free and fair agreement, if there is no, to use the legal term, acting in honor, what is there left? If you're attacked by a wild animal, say a rabid animal, just one that's got rabies, etc., and it attacks you, you don't want to hurt the animal, but you have to defend yourself. And you may have to kill that animal in order to defend yourself, because you cannot reason with it. You cannot explain to the animal that it is only acting this way because of the disease that's affecting it. And aren't we essentially seeing the same thing with the United States? Isn't it essentially acting drunk on power? If you're being attacked by a drunk, can you reason with them? Essentially, no. But you still have to defend yourself. Are we now maybe getting closer to the idea, or not the idea, but the realization that the United States just has to be stopped in general? They very clearly are a problem that affects the entire world. 900 military bases in like 150 some odd countries. They can just violate any agreement they want, and nobody can do anything about it. And when you play by the rules to try to deal with them acting like this, they call you a threat and start sending military threats after you. They either try to starve you to death and rob you of medications like Venezuela, or they sanction everything like they do to the DPRK. How do you deal with such an unreasonable actor as the United States? You have to defend yourself. And I think that's the lesson that the world is going to have to learn, and that I think many are learning right now. You know, imperialism is a beast. There is no dealing. There is no appealing to its conscience. There is no appealing to its, for the lack of a better term, a better nature, which there isn't. There isn't a better, by definition, imperialism is a bad nature if you want to use that term. There is no appealing to the goodness of it because it doesn't exist. So what do you do? What do we even do at that point? I think that's a question that the world is going to have to deal with within the next few decades. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.